Hi, Tim Eckert here, and today we're going to build this website, this imaginary web development agency, Unicorn Dev, and this is going to be our landing page, and we are going to use Bulma to create it. So here's the, if I go here, here's the Bulma page. So this is the page. Uh, you want to install, you can install it with Node, which we're going to do using npm install Bulma. And if we click on get started, we'll be brought to the documentation where I'm going to get something just to modify the Sass just slightly. Okay, so I'm going to cd into my projects folder, and I'm going to actually make a directory called Bulma landing page. And within the landing page, I am going to, well, I'm going to actually change into that directory. So cd Bulma landing page. And then I'm going to create two files. Well, actually first, getting ahead of myself. I'm going to install Bulma. Okay, so just npm install Bulma. It's going to go do that. If I list the directory now, I note that I have the node modules folder, and if I go into that, I do want to make note of something. Within there, there's a Bulma folder, and then within the Bulma folder, there is bulma.sass. So you'll see it right here, bulma.sass. I'm going to note that path later on when I'm creating my style sheet from Sass. Okay, so I'm going to go up to directories, and I'm going to create two files. One is an index.html, and then the other one is a style.scss page. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Vim, and I am going to go and actually open up my style.scss. Okay, and I'm going to go back to this Bulma landing page and go to where it says with Sass CLI. Okay, because there is something I need to copy. Okay, I'm going to just copy this and then paste that in. Okay, within that, I do want to make a note that I'm going to override my global variables here. And so it has to be before this importing. And then if I was just going to do custom code, I could put it below this line. So I'm going to make a note in case I ever come back to this project and need to refresh my memory. Okay, so there's going to be three global override variables that I'm going to override. That's all we're going to do with the Sass file. It's just going to be the primary, and I'm going to change that color. That's going to give me a purple to 6C6, 3FF. I'm going to override the text. That's going to be 3F3D56. And I'm going to override the background. That's going to be F2, F2, F2. Okay. And I'll save that. Okay. All right. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do with that file. So I am actually going to now go back to my index.html, and I'm going to bring up a terminal in the lower part of Vim, and I have my Vim RC map, so I can just hit Control N and bring up a terminal, which is pretty nice. And I'm going to, oh, I almost forgot. I do have to make a modification. So I'm actually going to exit out of the terminal and go back here. One thing I did mention, we need to make a note of the path. So I'm going to change this path to node underscore modules, because we had to go into that folder. And then we had to go into the Bulma folder. So I'm going to delete this stuff. Okay, and that should be the correct path. So now I can save that. And now I can go back to my index and open up my terminal. And now I can type this command sass style.scss to style.css. And that's going to compile a style sheet for us. Okay, so I'm going to let that happen. That's going to take a moment, and now that's done. So I'm going to exit out of my terminal, and now I'm going to start working on my HTML. So I'm going to type doc type HTML, declare my doc type. And then I'm going to have my opening HTML tag and my closing HTML tag. And within that, I'm going to have a head, opening and closing head tags, and also opening and closing body tags. Okay, and excuse me, I think I have to sneeze. Excuse me, wow, dust. Okay, and then I'm going to have my meta tags within here. Okay, so I'm going to just make a comment, and the first one's going to be the character set. It's going to be UTF-8, and I'm going to go back and just capitalize this. And we're also going to have the viewport tag. Content's going to be width equals device width initial scale equals 1.0. And we're also going to have a description tag. And you're going to notice I'm doing a little odd thing with the spacing in some of the stuff where I'm returning to the next line. That's because I want to keep my lines under 80 characters. And I'll show you something in Vim where we can check that later on. Just that's a formatting thing. Okay, so my description was a web design company built for the individual that is a unicorn. Okay, and because we're making unicorn web dev. Okay, and the link, we're going to link to a style sheet. So we're going to have a link relationship equals style sheet, href equals style.css. And then that's good for our head of our document. Now let's move into our body, and we're going to start with a nav tag. And the class is going to be navbar and also is primary, and that's going to give me that background that's a little purple. I'm going to tab down to the next one line and then just indent a little bit just for formatting. So we have navigation, aria label is going to be main and navigation, space and navigation. And now we are going to, and I'm going to make a comment that this is beginning the nav bar. Okay. Within there, we have a div with a class equal to container. And I'm going to make a comment that we're beginning the container. And within there, we have a div with a class equal to navbar brand. And we're beginning our navbar brand. And then within there, we have a link with the class navbar item. Also is uppercase. And we have the link going. I'm not going to have it go anywhere. And we're just going to say unicorn dev. Okay. All right. And then after that, I'm going to go a little space and we're going to function on the hamburger button. So we're going to have another link with a role equal to button, a class equal to navbar burger. Oops, I don't want to close that just yet. We're going to have an attribute aria label equals equals menu. And they give examples of this on the site in case you're wondering where I get this stuff from. ARIA expanded equals false. And the data target equals navbar menu. And we have to match the div with that later on. Okay, and I'm just kind of formatting this like they do with, if you've seen the Prettier. That's a plugin that you can use. So I'm sort of formatting it that way. Okay, we're going to close out the span and make 2 more of those, and then close out that link. Yep. Actually, don't need this. Oh no, I didn't need it. Never mind. What am I doing? Okay, and then here we're going to close out the brand div. I'll just make a note that we're ending the navbar brand. And you may want to take your time doing this so you don't make mistakes, because then you have to keep looking through and you're like, where did I make that mistake? And those kind of things. Okay, and then we're going to start a div with an ID of navbar menu, the ID above. Class is going to be navbar dash menu. And I'm going to make a comment that we are beginning the right menu. Okay, and one thing I'm trying to do is keep under 80 characters in line length. And if I want to check that, I can type into the command below, set color column equal to 80. And it gives me a nice indicator there. And we notice that all the lines are 80 characters or under. So that's good. If I want to turn that off, I can just type color column equals 0. Okay. All right. So after that, we're going to have a div with a class equal to navbar end. And I'm just going to make a note that we are beginning the inner nav menu. Okay, and then after that, we're going to have a bunch of things that are the same. So a link with a class equal to, and these aren't going to go anywhere, so I don't have them going anywhere yet. I would have to have a href in there. I don't, so this isn't going to be functional. It's more just for the look of it. And what I'm going to do is we are going to copy this a couple times. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll fix that later. Okay, some of the spacing here. Just space this out nicely. Okay, and so we have home. Then we have also about, contact, portfolio, and finally blog. Okay. So now we want to close that inner nav menu. So I'm just making a note that we're closing it. And I want to close my container. And then I want to close my nav bar. And we actually forgot to close one. I got to end the right menu. So I've got to close that. And if we've properly indented it, you can see that this is kind of helpful to see that we've got everything properly indented. So now let's go to our projects and go to the landing page, and let's open that. And we see we have it spaced out nicely. We don't have the brand. Did I add the brand yet? Let's take a look at that. So if I go up here, oh yeah, we're going to have to add an image here. And the image is going to have a source equal to images / unicorn.svg with a width equal to 112, which I copied this from the example, just if you're wondering where I got this from, and height equal to 28 because it seemed to work well for them. Okay, so now I've saved that. I'm going to open a terminal and I'm going to make a directory called images. So we have that. I'll exit out of that. Now I have a unicorn in my downloads folder, so I'm just going to go there and we're going to take that, copy that, and then paste that into our images folder. And now we'll go back to our page and refresh, and we have this nice little unicorn showing up. Okay, so now we're going to work on the hero section. Okay, so I'm just going to make a note that I am actually, no, I don't want to make too many comments because I'll make a comment at the end. We're going to have a div ID of hero and then a class equal to my5, so that's margin on the y-axis, 5. They give different, it's not exactly 5. If we go to the documentation, we go to helpers and we go to spacing, this is where you find the stuff. So 5 is 1.5 rem. So it's giving a spacing on the top and the bottom of 1.5 rem. And then we're going to do padding on the x-axis of 0.75 rem. So that's px-3. Okay, and I'm just going to make a comment that we are beginning the hero. Okay, and then we're going to make a container. So div class equals container. And make a comment, we are beginning the container. Okay, then they do columns. Bootstrap does columns with, you have a row and then you have the columns. Bulma has a div class of columns, and then within that you have, so we're beginning our columns. Within that you have a div of column, okay? And then you can break it apart, as I'll show you in a moment. So we're going to have a div with a class of column, and then is 3/5, and a margin on top 2. Okay, so margin 2, that's a half rem on the top. And I'm just going to say, so this is going to be the left part of the hero. So begin left hero. And within the left hero, we're going to have another div with a class of columns. Okay, because let's take a look at what we're building. We're having a column here and then another column here. So on this left column, okay, that's 3/5. This whole thing is 3/5, and these are going to be a half. All right. So we have columns, and I'm going to make a note that we're beginning the left columns. Okay. And then within that, we have a div with a class of column. And we want it, half, so is 1/2. That's a Bulma class. Make another note. Begin left column. All right, or left column. Okay, for column. Okay, within that I have an h1, and that has a class. And Bootstrap does sizes, so is Bulma does sizes. Is size 4. I'll show you that in a minute. Welcome to Unicorn Web Dev. Close out the h1 tag. And let me just save that for a minute, and we'll talk about these sizing classes. So if I search for typography, I think it's in there. If I search for typography, let me go down. Maybe it's not in this section. So let me just do Bulma text size. If you Google that, typography helpers. Okay, so it's in the. All right, so here's the sizes. So we're using size 4, 1.5 rem. Size 3 is 2 rem, so on and so forth. We're going to use 5 and 6 also. So that sets the size of the font. Okay. All right. So we also, below the heading, we have a paragraph with a class, and I'm going to do is size 5. Okay. So I'm not using like H1, H2 to define the sizes. I'm using this actual is size helper classes in Bulma to do that. Okay, and I'm just going to say release your inner unicorn. Okay, and then we'll close out that paragraph. And then below there, we're going to have a heading 2 with a class of also is size 5. And I'm just going to say HTML and close out that. And then below that, we're going to do an unordered list. And we're going to have 4 list items with a class of padding on the left of 4. That's not 4, but that's defined based on their spacing. And I'm going to have, if you notice here, I have this like commented in the HTML. Now I can't just put a left bracket and the exclamation point, or actually we'll comment that out in my code. So to get those comments, I'm doing an ampersand LT semicolon, and then we have the exclamation point dash dash. I'll leave a space, dash dash, and then ampersand GT for the right bracket. And then we're going to close out that list item, and I'm going to copy this 3 more times. Okay, so this is how I'm making my comments, and let's close that unordered list. And then we're going to actually put our text in there. So, all right, so we're going to say something like nicely formatted. Spaces, not tabs. Semantic elements. And real world. And I don't want to get this line to get too long, so I'm going to go down here. Not theoretical. Now, in the real world, we probably just would let that go longer than 80 characters, but whatever. Okay, so the next one, I have another H2 class, is size 5. And that's going to be just CSS. Close out the H2 tag. And we have another unordered list. In that, I have a list item with a class padding to the left of 4. That indents it a little bit. And I'm using some CSS brackets here. And I'm going to do this 3 more times. Okay, and we'll close out that unordered list. And then we'll put in each of the text here. So we'll say Bulma, which is what we're working on. Yes. And Bootstrap. Yes. And Materialize. I'll have to do a tutorial on that at some point. Yes. And Tailwind, which check that video out. I did a tutorial on that recently. Okay, so now we've got that section done. Well, that part of that list done. The next thing I'm going to put in here is an H2 with a class of isSize5, and it's going to be JavaScript. Okay, and we'll close out that. And within that, we're going to have another unordered list items with a class of PL4. And we're going to just close those out. And I'm going to make 3 more of those. And then close this unordered list out. And we'll put our text in here. Let, like, a variable, let React, get it? Let Angular, okay? Let Vue, and let Svelte. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to close out a div here. This is closing the left part. So we're going to say end left. Hopefully that's not getting too confusing. We're going to have a div now with a class equal to column and is1/2. Okay, that's the other half of the left-hand side. And so we are beginning the right left. Okay. Now, I put in a div with a class of margin on the y-axis auto. And then below that, we have an H2 with a class, and this one's going to be isSize4. And margin on the y-axis 5, so that's a certain amount of rem. And we're going to say sass, and I was playing with these to get it to look right. Okay, and then we're going to have an unordered list below that, and list items with a class of padding left 4 that indents it a little bit, and we're going to have 4 of those. Okay, and close out that list. What am I doing? Okay, and then we go forward here, and so I'm going to say Dart Sass, which is what I used earlier. CLI, which is also what I used. Mixins, which is something you can do in Sass, and also inheritance, which is another Sass thing. Okay, and then below that, we're going to have an H2 with a class of isSize4 and margin on the y-axis of 5, and we're going to say TypeScript. And let's see what I had for TypeScript. I just had 2 list items there. Those have classes of PL4. Just say something like, oh yeah, I'll close that out and then copy it and then put in the text. All right, so I had 2 of those. I'm going to say clean JavaScript and something like, I had less mistakes. Let's do less bugs. Okay, less bugs in your JavaScript. Close that out. Then after that, I had a div with an ID equal to, because I wanted to rotate this div, equal to PHP class equals margin top 3. The style for the div, now this is how I rotate it, because I couldn't find a rotation class in Bulma. So I just rotate it -10 degrees for my style. Within that, I had an h2 with a class of is size 4. And I'm just going to say, and of course, PHP. And let's put an exclamation point there. And then we'll close out that heading, and we'll close out the div, and we'll close out this div. Okay. All right. And so we closed out the PHP div. We've closed out the right left div. But we also closed out we closed out the my auto div. Okay. Let me see. So now we have to close out the right left div. I'm just going to write end right left. And after that, we have to close out the end left columns. And then we're going to end the left part of the hero. Okay, and next we're going to have a div with a class equal to column is to fifths. And we're going to begin the right hero. And within that, we have an image with a source equal to images unicorn.svg. So we should have that already because we use that for the menu. Alt text, I'm going to put unicorn web dev. You should always put in alt text. Okay, and then I'm going to close out that div. So we're now ending the right part of the hero. Okay, and then I'm going to end the columns div. Okay. And after that, we have to end the container. And finally, end the hero. So if you're wondering about indenting here, I'm using 2 spaces. With a lot of these modern CSS frameworks, it just helps because otherwise you're way across the screen there. So you can see there's a lot of indentation in them. Okay, so I saved that. Let's go back up to here to the thing we're working on, and it comes up. Everything looks good, just like we want it to. Okay, so our next part, we're going to work on this section here, which has that primary background, and we're going to have to do a slightly different thing to do that. Now, because this code is getting so many indentations in the code, I'm going to say something like end hero, and then just make it very apparent, and then something like begin info section 1. Okay, so we'll have a nice spacing in our code so we can see, okay, I ended it there. Cool. All right, so I'm going to start with a div with an ID of info section 1, class equal to has background primary. Okay, so that's going to give me that purple background, padding on the top of 6, padding on the x-axis 3. Now those aren't exactly those numbers, and we're going to start a comment and just say begin info section 1. I'm trying to keep my lines under 80 characters there. All right, and then we're going to have a div with a class equal to container. And so I'm going to make a comment that I'm beginning the container. And a div with a class equal to columns. And I'm beginning my columns. And within that, I have a class equal to column is 1/2. Spell that right. And margin on the right of 6. Okay. Okay. Within there, I have a third level heading. The class is going to be has text info light. That's going to give me a light color. Is size 4. And say something like, we can be simple. Okay, then I'm going to have a paragraph with a class equal to has text info light is size 6, margin on the bottom 3, and I'm just going to just space out my lines. Don't need something complex. We can build a website to meet your needs. If you only need a landing page with contact info, don't overdo it. Comma, only build a landing page with simple contact info. Close out that paragraph. Okay. Next, we're going to have a paragraph with a class equal to has text info light is size 6, margin on the bottom of 3, and say something. We can create a simple site. So this is for the static sites that you're going to build, but use advanced techniques to help you optimize it for speed and SEO. That's search engine optimization. And then, this is important. Release your inner unicorn. All right, and close out that paragraph. Okay, and we're going to have one more paragraph with a class equal to has text info light is size 6. This isn't going to have a margin on the bottom, and we're just going to say something like, we can help your unicorn. Okay, something silly. All right, and then actually I indented a little much on this. All right, so let me fix this up. Yeah, so the H3s can be the same as, or the paragraphs can be the same as the H3. Okay, we're going to close out that div, so the left part, and then we're going to have a div with a class, another column is 1/2, and a margin on the left of 6. That's kind of spacing out the two areas. And we have an image with a source equal to, we're going to have to move this over, images static.svg. Now I got these from Undraw, in case you're wondering. Alt is going to be a static site. So that's the alt text. And we'll close out that div. And then we're going to end our columns div. And then we're going to end our container div. And then we're going to end the info section 1. All right. So one thing we've got to do is go to our downloads and get that static site. So that's this one. I'm going to copy it and then just rename it as I paste it in. and I'm going to rename it static. I think I just called it, yeah, static. Yep. Okay, so let's bring back up our browser. This is what we want it to look like. This is what we're working on. I'm going to refresh. Let's scroll down, and so far so good. All right, so we've got that section. In our next section, we're going to have a little bit larger text. We're going to have this WordPress, and then we're going to have something small here, a little small disclaimer before we move to the form and the footer. Okay, so let's get started with that. All right, to avoid confusion, I'm going to make a comment, end info section 2, begin contact section, oh no, sorry, begin info section 2. We're not doing the contact section just yet. Okay. So I'm going to start with the div with an ID equal to info section 2. Class is going to be padding on the top 6, padding on the x-axis 3, and make a note that we are beginning info section 2. Okay, within that, I'm going to have a container. And I'm going to make a note that I'm beginning my container. Within that, I have a class equal to columns. And we're beginning, whoops, I got to close that out. Beginning the columns. Okay, and then in that, I have a div with a class equal to column, and then is to fifths. And H3 class of is size 4. And we're going to say something like, sometimes you need complexity. Close out that heading 3. We're next going to have a paragraph with a class of is size 5. So that's going to give me a little bit larger text than the typical paragraph. And margin on the Y, 3. It's going to space it out a little bit. And we'll say, do you need a dynamic site? We can do WordPress, Joomla, or Drupal. Those are 3 content management systems. Whatever you need, we can implement PHP or Node. So we're flexing a little bit on what we know. Okay, we're going to have another paragraph with a class equal to is size 5. No padding or no margin on the top and the bottom of this one outside of normal. Okay, and we're going to say maybe you need Express.js or Laravel, which is a PHP framework. Don't worry, we have you covered. Don't let, now I'm back with the unicorn stuff. Don't let your unicorn be suppressed because your web developer doesn't have what unicorns eat. We do. It's mermaids. Now I'm being silly again. Okay, so we're going to close out that paragraph. Then we have to have a paragraph of the class equal to, is size 7, and margin on the y-axis of 2. And we're going to say no mermaids were harmed during the building of this website. Okay, we'll close out that div. We're then going to start a div with a class equal to column is 3/5, because the other one was 2/5. And then within that, we're going to have an image with a source. We're going to go into the images folder, and we're going to have to bring over this WordPress.svg. Don't want to close that. I'm going to have the alt text equal to dynamic sites built with a CMS. And let's close out that div. And then we're going to close out the columns div. So we're going to make a note that we're ending the columns. And then we're going to end the container. And then we're going to end info section 1, or 2, rather. Let's save that, and let's go to our downloads folder, and let's get the downloads here. Let's get the WordPress. So let's copy that, bring that into our project, and just name it WordPress. We're going to rename that just WordPress, and we're going to take a sip of coffee. Oh, yeah. All right. So now let's see how this part is. Okay, so everything looks good. We've got that next info section done. And now after that, we have this contact us and the footer, and we will be done with our landing page. So let's keep going. All right. So I'm going to make another comment here that we're ending this info section 2, and we are beginning the contact us section. Okay. And that just, help me later on if I need to go back into this and fix something. All right, so we're going to begin with the div ID of contact us. Class is going to be PT. I have a bunch of classes here. So padding top 6 has background primary. That's the purple background. Has text info light. Okay. And I'm just making a note that we are beginning the contact us. Okay, then within there, we've got a div with a class equal to container. We are beginning the container. And then within that, we have a div with a class. Now we're going to use flex. So we're going to say is flex and is justify. We're going to justify the content to the center. So is justify content center. And so I'm just going to make a note that we're beginning the flex. All right, we're beginning the flex. Okay. And now we're going to have a form within this. So we're going to have a form with an action. We're not going to specify the action, but typically that would be like a PHP page. Method. Okay, we're going to leave that blank. We'll probably use post. Okay. And I'm going to say a comment of begin form. Okay. And so we're going to have an h4 with a class equal to is size 4 has text centered. And we're going to say contact us and close out that heading 4 class. And then we're going to have the full name part of the form. So full name, I'll just make a comment. And we're going to have a label with a class equal to label. These are all Bulma classes. We're going to have has text centered, has text info light. The label is going to be for full name. Then within the label tags, we'll have full name, colon, and a space, and then we'll close out the label. And then we have to have a div with a class of control for the form control. Margin on the bottom of 3, that's a little bit for the spacing. Within that div, I have an input with a class equal to input. Type is text. Placeholder is going to be enter full name. ID equals full name. And then we'll have name equals full name. And we'll make it required. Okay. All right. And then we're going to close out the div and make a note that I'm ending the full name part of the form. And then I'm going to begin the email part of the form. So in that, I'm going to have a label with a class of label. Has text centered. Has text info light. It's going to be for the email. Placeholder is going to be enter email. ID is going to be email. Name is going to be email. And we're also going to make this required. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to have a div with a class of control. Margin bottom of 3. And within the div, I have an input, the class equal to input. Type equal to email. Placeholder equal to, oh no, I'm doing that again. What am I doing? Oh no, I'm still in the right spot. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I messed up here. I was like, what am I doing? All right. Okay, so at the end of this, this is, for email. Okay. I jumped ahead of myself. So for email, you might be wondering, what are you doing? All right, and we're going to say email, and I'm going to end my label there. Okay, then let me just fix all this stuff up. We're just going to delete that. Sorry about that. So go here. Now we want a div with a class equal to control and a margin bottom of 3. Okay, and within that we want an input with a class equal to input. Type is, that's where I jumped ahead of myself. Type is email. Placeholder equals enter email. ID equals email. Name equals email. And we want to make that required. Okay, and then we close out that div. Okay, and I'm going to say that we're ending the email. And now we want to begin the message part. Okay, let's scroll down so you can. Okay, and in the message part, we're going to have a label with a class equal to label. Has text centered. has text info light. Okay. And this is going to be for the message. Okay, and I'm just going to say message. And then we're going to close out that label. And we're also going to have a div with a class equal to control. But this time we're going to use a text area. So margin on the bottom of 3. And we're going to start our text area, which we have to have an opening and closing tag for this, unlike the input. So the class is going to be text area. That's a Bulma class. Placeholder is going to be something like leave a message, ... ID is going to be message. And the ID and the name, that's for like doing stuff with the form. This form isn't actually functional at this point. We're just doing the aesthetics. So, and then we're going to close out the text area tag, and we're going to close out the div. Okay. And we're going to end the message. Now we've got to begin the submit button. So I'm going to say begin submit. And we're going to have a div with a class equal to control. Pattern on the bottom of 6 is flex, because I want the button centered, and then is, and this is how I'm going to do it, justify content center. And then we're going to have an input with a class equal to button, type equal to submit, an ID equal to submit, a name equal to submit. So, you know, with PHP, if you were doing this, you would say if is set post submit, then we'll set some variables. So that's why we name those things. And then we're going to close the div and then end the submit. And we're going to close the form. I'm just going to make a note that I'm ending the form. Then we end the flex section. So we're going to close that div. End flex. Then we're going to end the container. End the container. Oops. And then we're going to end the contact us section. Okay, go down a little bit. All right, so now let's take a look. So this is what we want it to look like. We're going to refresh, and this is what it does look like. So it looks the same. So that's all good. We have a nice little form there. Looks very nice. All we need now is to finish up the footer. Okay, so we're going to go do that. And that's just a little bit of code left. All right, so I'm going to have a section called, excuse me, section called begin footer. And we're going to have a div with an ID equal to footer. The class, we have a bunch of classes. So is flex, is justify content center, has background dark, padding on the Y of 6. And all right, so then we're going to have a paragraph with a class of is size 7. That's going to give us small text. Has text info light. That's going to give us light text. And then we're going to say copyright. The copyright symbol, which I do the ampersand and copy and semicolon. 2021, Timothy Unkert, and all rights reserved. And close that paragraph. And then we'll close the div. Okay, so we're ending the footer. And let's just okay, let's just clean up the spaces there, and let's take a look. So I'm going to hit Control R to refresh, and we've got our footer. So we've got our landing page. Now, if you look at this, you see it stacks nicely like this. We'll note that Bulma does not have any JavaScript. So the menu, you would have to write your JavaScript to get the menu to work. But we've built a nice landing page. The Bulma CSS framework allows some very nice aesthetics, very nice look and feel to the site. So that concludes this video on building a landing page with Bulma CSS. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, as it really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching and have a great day.